Years passed like falling leaves, quiet, steady, full of change. The sky spire rose again. Taller now, its towers woven with human steel and Silthari light. Gardens bloomed on every level, some with silver-leaved trees, others with earth flowers that Lila had coaxed from old seed banks. Children played in the courtyards, some with pointed ears and violet eyes, others with brown skin and messy hair, all speaking a mix of English and the soft tongue of the Silthari. They called it the New Tongue. They called themselves the Concord. Lila no longer wore a soldier's uniform. She wore a robe of deep blue, stitched with silver threads that shimmered like stars. She was not a general, not a queen, but a bridge. She taught human history in the Great Hall, not as a tale of war, but as a song of survival. She showed them how to build radios from scrap, how to bake bread that smelled like home, how to laugh even when the sky darkened. Lyria ruled now, not as empress, but as regent of the United Worlds. The old title had been retired. There were no more emperors or councils of fear, only voices heard and weighed. She sat in open courts, listened to farmers and engineers alike, and always kept Kalen at her side. The dragon had grown massive, his wings now wide enough to shade a plaza, but his eyes were still gentle. He let children climb on his back and sometimes carried Lila and Lyria over the clouds just for the joy of it. The Mark Ficky Sentinel stood in the central square, not as a weapon, but as a monument. Its armor was polished, its cockpit open to all. Visitors could climb inside and hear recordings. Lila's voice, Lyria's song, the last broadcast from Earth. It was called the Heart of Memory. Peace had come, but it was not idle. The Devourers had not returned, but everyone knew they would. So the Alliance prepared. Human engineers and Silthari weavers built new mechs. Lighter, faster, powered by both plasma and pulse song. Young pilots trained in the Undercity, learning to sync with machines that remembered their ancestors. And deep in the vaults, Kalen taught the hatchlings, the new bond dragons, how to speak to steel and sky. One morning, as the twin suns rose over Zinara, Lila walked the sky garden alone. She was older now, lines around her eyes, silver in her hair, but her step was sure. She stopped at the edge, where the clouds parted to show the world below. Green valleys, rebuilt cities, rivers that ran clear again. Lyria joined her, barefoot as always, her silver hair loose. Kalen landed softly behind them, his scales glowing gold in the dawn light. They finished the new ship, Lyria said. The first to leave Zinara in centuries. Lila nodded. Named after my sister. Elena's Hope, Lyria said with a smile. It carries seeds, books, and a message. Not just to find others, but to say we are here. We remember. We are ready. They stood in silence for a while, watching the sunrise paint the clouds in colors no human word could name. Do you ever miss Earth? Lyria asked softly. Every day, Lila said, but not the way I used to. I used to miss it like a wound. Now I miss it like a story I get to tell, like a song I get to sing. Lyria reached for her hand, their fingers intertwined, human and Silthari, rough and smooth, warm and cool. You gave us back our courage, Lyria said. You gave me back my future, Lila replied. Below, the city stirred to life. Bells rang, not alarms but chimes of greeting. Children ran laughing through the streets, chasing a small bond dragon whose scales flickered pink with excitement. In the distance, the Elena's Hope lifted from the launch spire, its engines humming a tune that mixed human jazz with Silthari wind harps. Kalen stretched his wings and let out a low, rumbling purr. It was not a warning. It was contentment. That evening, the two women sat on their favorite balcony sharing a meal of glowing fruit and crusty bread. The stars came out one by one, steady and bright. No riffs, no silence. Just the quiet hum of a world healing. Lila looked at Lyria, then at Kalen curled at their feet, his eyes half closed in peace. She thought of the battlefield long ago, the crimson sky, the moment a silver-haired girl pointed at a broken soldier and said, I want this human mother. It had not been a command. It had been a promise, a choice to believe in something lost, to reach across time, fear, and ruin and say you are not forgotten. And because of that choice, a new age had begun. Not perfect, not easy, but alive. As the twin moons rose, casting long shadows over the united city, Lila leaned back and closed her eyes. She did not dream of war. She dreamed of gardens, of songs, of hands reaching across stars. And somewhere, far beyond Zinara, The Elena's hope sailed into the dark, carrying a single message etched in every language it knew. We are still here. We remember you. Come home. Days passed in the sky spire like slow breaths. Lila woke each morning to soft light filtering through living walls that pulsed with a gentle rhythm. Her wounds healed quickly, thanks to Scifi salves that smelled like crushed stars and tasted like cold rain. She was given clean clothes, simple soft robes the color of twilight, and allowed to walk the garden paths that wound through floating islands of green and gold. Kalen often followed her, his silent steps a constant presence at her heels. He never growled, never snapped. He simply watched, listened, and sometimes curled beside her when she sat by the edge of a sky pool, staring down at the clouds far below. Lyria visited often. She brought food that shimmered like jewels, fruits that burst with cool liquid, bread that melted on the tongue, water that changed flavor with every sip. They ate together on wide stone benches that grew from the ground like ancient trees. At first, Lila spoke little. She answered only when asked, her voice flat, her eyes distant, but Lyria was patient. She did not demand. She asked gentle questions about Earth, about oceans, about cities, about music. And slowly Lila began to talk. She told Lyria about the smell of wet pavement after rain in Chicago, about the sound of subway trains rumbling under New York, about her little sister who used to sing off-key lullabies before bed. She spoke of war too, the real kind, not the clean battles of history books, the kind with mud, fear, and broken promises. Lyria listened with wide eyes, her fingers still, her breath quiet. She had never known anything like it. Her world was ordered, calm, built on centuries of peace. Pain was rare. Death was distant. But Lila's words painted a world that burned brightly even as it fell apart. In return, Lyria shared stories of the Scifi, how they once traveled the stars in great ships of song and light, how they built cities that sang with the wind, how they stopped exploring when the Great Silence came, the time when every human signal across the galaxy went dark in a single night. The Scifi thought it was a plague, a war, a choice. They never knew for sure, so they turned inward, sealed their borders, and forgot. But not all forgot. Lyria's grandmother had kept old data crystals hidden in a vault beneath the spire. Inside were human voices, songs, speeches, laughter. Lyria had listened to them in secret since she was a child. She knew the words to Happy Birthday in 3 Earth languages. She could hum Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. She cried once when she heard a recording of a mother singing to her baby. That was why she had chosen Lila, not for her rank or her strength, but because Lila carried that same fire, the same stubborn, messy, beautiful will to live. Still, not everyone in the spire welcomed the human. Whispers spread through the halls. The High Council, a group of elder Scifi who governed alongside the Empress, grew uneasy. They saw Lila as a threat, a spark that could reignite old fires best left cold. They sent observers, tall, silent figures in gray robes, who watched Lila from the shadows of the gardens. They recorded her movements, her words, even the way Kalen responded to her voice. One evening, as Lila walked alone along a narrow path lined with glowing flowers, she felt it, a shift in the air. The flowers dimmed, the wind stilled. She turned just as a figure dropped from above, blade in hand. It was a council enforcer, face hidden, weapon humming with violet energy. Lila had no time to shout. She threw herself sideways as the blade sliced the air where her neck had been. She rolled, scrambling for anything to defend herself, but she had no weapons. The enforcer advanced, silent and swift. Lila backed toward the edge of the path, her heart hammering. Below was nothing but sky and distant clouds. She was trapped. Then fire erupted. Not hot, not wild, but controlled, precise. A stream of golden flame shot past her shoulder and struck the enforcer square in the chest. The figure cried out, armor melting, and stumbled back, falling into the void. Kalen stood on the path behind Lila, smoke curling from his jaws, his scales blazing with light. His eyes burned with fury. Lyria appeared moments later, running barefoot, her hair loose, her face pale with fear. When she saw Lila unharmed and Kalen standing guard, she let out a breath she must have been holding for minutes. "They tried to kill you," she whispered, not as a question, but as a fact. Lila nodded, still shaking. "Why?" "Because you remind them of what they lost," Lyria said, "and what they fear might return." That night, Lyria moved Lila to a new chamber, deeper in the spire, hidden behind walls that only responded to royal blood. Kalen stayed outside the door, coiled like a living lock. Inside, Lyria sat with Lila for hours, her usual calm replaced by something harder, sharper, I cannot protect you forever, she admitted, her voice low. The council has the Empress's ear. They say you carry the old chaos, that your presence will wake the Devourers. The Devourers again, Lila said. Who are they really? Lyria looked away. They are not just stories. Long ago, before the silence, the galaxy was full of life. Then the Devourers came. Not ships. Not armies. Something older. They feed on thought, on memory, on civilization itself. They do not conquer. They erase. And they remember every species they've tasted. Humans fought them hardest. You built weapons that hurt them. You made them bleed. And they never forgot. Lila felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air. So you think I'm a beacon? Maybe, Lyria said. Or maybe you're the key to fighting them again. The next morning, Lyria took Lila to a place no outsider had seen in thousands of years, the Archive of Echoes. It was a vast chamber deep in the spire's roots where light bent in strange ways and time seemed to slow. Shelves of crystal held memories, not books. Lyria touched one, and a scene bloomed in the air. A human ship, battered but proud, firing a strange beam into a swirling black void. Another showed Silthari and humans standing side by side on a ruined planet, hands clasped, faces grim but united. We were allies, Lyria said softly, not enemies. The silence wasn't betrayal. It was sacrifice. Your people stayed behind to hold the Devourers back while we fled. Lila stared at the images, her chest tight. All this time, Earth had been remembered as reckless, violent, doomed. But here, in this hidden place, humans were heroes. As they left the archive, a messenger found them, tall, urgent, eyes wide. The council has called for judgment, he said. They demand the human be handed over for memory cleansing, or exile into the void. Lyria's face hardened. They will not have her. That evening, in the Garden of Echoes, a place where sound never faded, where every word ever spoken lingered in the air like mist, Lyria stood before her mother, the Empress. Lila watched from behind a curtain of silver vines, Kaelin at her side. You risk everything for one human, the Empress said, her voice calm but heavy. She is not just one, Lyria replied. She is proof that we were wrong to forget, that courage still exists, that we can be more than ghosts in a perfect cage. The Empress was silent for a long time. Then she turned and walked away, her cloak trailing behind her like a river of stars. 2 nights later, the attack came again, not one enforcer this time, but 3. They came through the walls themselves, which parted like water for those with council authority. Lila was asleep when Kaelin's growl woke her. She rolled from the bed just as the first blade slashed through her pillow. This time, she was ready. She grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the table and hurled it into the nearest attacker's face. It shattered, and the enforcer stumbled. Kaelin lunged, fire lighting the room, but a second enforcer struck him with a pulse rod. The dragon yelped and fell, his light dimming. Lila fought with everything she had, elbows, knees, teeth. She disarmed one, broke another's wrist, but the third pinned her against the wall, blade at her throat. Then the door exploded inward. Lyria stood there, not in robes, but in armor, sleek silver, etched with glowing runes. Her eyes blazed with amethyst fire. In her hand was a staff that hummed with power. She moved faster than Lila had ever seen, striking with precision that left the enforcers unconscious in seconds. She dropped to her knees beside Kaelin, her hands glowing as she placed them on his side. The dragon stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Then she turned to Lila, her voice shaking not with fear but with resolve. They will not stop, she said, not until you are gone. Or I am. Lila looked at her, this alien princess who had saved her life twice, who believed in a dead world's worth, who risked her throne for a stranger. And for the first time since Zanara, Lila felt something other than survival. She felt purpose. Then we fight, Lila said. Lyria nodded. Together. Outside, the twin moons set. The sky turned from crimson to deep violet, and in the heart of the spire a human and an elf-like princess made a silent vow, not just to survive but to remember. To awaken what had been buried, to face whatever came next side by side with a dragon who burned not with fire alone, but with loyalty. The sky tore open like rotten cloth. From the black rift above Zanara, the Devourers came, not as ships but as living storms. Their forms shifted constantly, made of shadow, bone, and jagged light. They did not fly. They unfolded. Each one pulsed with a sound that was not sound, a vibration that made teeth ache and thoughts scatter. They fed on memory, on culture, on the very idea of a people, and they remembered humans. Lila sat in the cockpit of the Mark V Sentinel, her hand steady on the controls. The machine responded to her like an extension of her own body. She could feel its power, its age, its hunger for battle. Outside, the city burned. Silthari energy shields flickered and failed under the Devourer's assault. Towers of glass shattered. Floating gardens fell like dying birds. Lyria rode Kaelin through the chaos, her silver hair whipping in the wind. Her eyes locked on Lila's mech. Kaelin's scales glowed brighter with every passing second, his body humming with ancient energy. He was not just a dragon now. He was a beacon, a living key to the old alliance. They are targeting the spire's core. Lyria called through the comm link, her voice strained but clear. If it falls, the whole city collapses. Then we hold it, Lila replied. She moved the sentinel forward, its heavy feet crushing rubble as it climbed the central slope toward the sky spire. Other mechs followed, 12 in all, awakened by Kaelin's call. They were slow but strong. Their armor bore the scars of a war long past, but their weapons still worked. Plasma cannons hummed to life on their shoulders. Vibroblades extended from their arms. The Devourers noticed them immediately. 3 of the shadow beasts turned, their forms twisting into jagged spears of darkness. They dove. Lila fired first. The plasma blast struck the lead Devourer and exploded in a burst of white fire. The creature shrieked, a sound that echoed inside Lila's skull but did not die. It reformed angrier, faster. The second Devourer latched onto a nearby sentinel, its body melting into the metal, corroding it from within. The mech staggered, sparks flying, then collapsed in a heap of dead steel. They eat machines too, Lila muttered. Not all, Lyria said, swooping low on Kaelin. Only those without a human soul. Kaelin unleashed a stream of golden fire. It did not burn like normal flame. It carried memory. Fragments of song, of laughter, of human courage. The Devourer struck by it writhed, its form flickering like a broken screen. For a moment it looked almost human. Then it vanished in a puff of ash. What was that? Lila asked. Kaelin's true fire, Lyria said. It feeds on what they steal. It gives it back. Hope flared in Lila's chest. Maybe they could win. But then the Empress appeared. She stood alone on the highest balcony of the spire, arms outstretched, her cloak billowing like storm clouds. Around her a dome of pure light formed, a final shield woven from her own life force. The Devourers slammed into it again and again, but it held. Mother, Lyria whispered, her voice breaking. The Empress turned her head slightly, as if she heard. Her eyes met Lyria's across the battlefield. There was no anger there, only sorrow and pride. Then the shield flickered. One of the largest Devourers, a beast the size of a mountain, rose from the rift. It had no eyes, only a gaping maw lined with broken monuments, shattered books, and the faces of forgotten civilizations. It opened its mouth and screamed. The sound was silence itself. The shield shattered. The Empress fell to her knees. No, Lyria cried. Lila pushed the sentinel to its limits, charging up the final slope. The other mechs formed a wall behind her, firing everything they had. Kaelin circled above, raining memory fire on the smaller Devourers. But the Great One kept coming. It reached the spire's base and began to climb, its body dissolving stone and metal as it moved. The city groaned. Platforms cracked. People screamed. Lyria landed Kaelin on the spire's roof near her fallen mother. The Empress looked up, her face pale, her breath shallow. You were right, she whispered. I was wrong to forget. Lyria took her hand. It's not too late. Below, Lila reached the Devourer just as it breached the upper levels. She swung the Sentinel's vibroblade, cutting deep into its side. Black ichor poured out, sizzling on the ground. The creature turned, its maw opening wide. Inside the cockpit, Lila felt her thoughts unraveling. Images flashed, her sister crying, her squad burning, Earth turning to dust. The Devourer was eating her mind. Then Kaelin landed on the Sentinel's shoulder. He pressed his forehead to the cockpit glass. Warmth flooded Lila's mind. Not words, but feelings, courage, loyalty, hope. Memories that were not hers, but Lyria's. A child singing under twin moons. A dragon hatching in starlight. A promise made in a garden of echoes. The Devourer hesitated. Lila seized the moment. She triggered the Sentinel's final weapon. A core pulse designed to overload in a blast of pure human will. It would destroy the mech. Maybe her too. Lyria, she said into the comm. If this works, tell them about Earth. Tell them we were real. Lila, no, Lyria began. But Lila activated the pulse. Light erupted. Not fire, but something brighter. A wave of memory, of song, of every human who ever lived. It washed over the devourer, filling it with what it had stolen for so long. The creature swelled, then burst apart like a soap bubble scattering into harmless dust. Silence fell. The rift in the sky closed. The remaining devourers shrieked and fled, unable to face the light. Lila's sentinel lay in ruins, its core dark. But she was alive, crawling from the wreckage, coughing smoke. Lyria ran to her, tears streaming down her face. Kalen nuzzled Lila's hand, his glow soft now but steady. The Empress rose slowly, supported by her daughter. She looked at Lila, then at the broken mechs, then at the sky. The Alliance is reborn, she said, her voice weak but clear. But the victory was fragile. The council elders gathered in the ruined plaza, their faces grim. Elder Vera stepped forward, her robes torn, her eyes hard. You saved us, she admitted to Lila. But the cost is high. The spire is damaged. Our people are afraid. And the devourers will return. They always do. Then we prepare, Lyria said. We rebuild together. Vera looked at the Empress. And what of the human? The Empress was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke. She is not a guest. She is not a prisoner. She is a founder of the new conquered. Let it be known, humans and Silthari stand as one. Cheers rose from the crowd. Soft at first, then louder. Silthari citizens emerged from shelters, their eyes wide with wonder. They looked at Lila not with fear, but with gratitude. That night, in a chamber rebuilt from the ruins, Lila, Lyria, and the Empress made plans. The mechs would be repaired. The Undercity would become a training ground. Human knowledge would be shared. Silthari healing would be given freely, and Kalen would teach the young bond dragons. Eggs had been found in the deepest vaults, dormant for millennia. But as the others slept, Lila stood alone on the balcony, staring at the stars. Earth was gone. Her old life was dust. But here, among aliens who once thought her a myth, she had found something new. Not just purpose, but family. Lyria joined her, silent as always. Kalen curled at their feet, his scales reflecting the twin moons. What are you thinking? Lyria asked. That maybe we were never meant to be alone, Lila said. Not humans. Not Silthari. Not even dragons, Lyria smiled. Then we will never be alone again. Above them, the stars burned steady. The devourers were gone for now. But the Alliance was awake, and this time it would not sleep. The days that followed were quiet, but not peaceful. Tension hung in the air like storm clouds waiting to break. Lyria moved through the spire with new purpose, her steps firm, her eyes sharp. She no longer wore soft robes but light armor that shimmered like dawn on water. Kalen stayed close to her side, his scales brighter now, his movements strong again after the healing. Lila trained with him in the hidden courtyards, learning how to read his signals. A flick of the tail meant danger, a low hum meant calm. A raised head meant someone was coming. Lyria began to share secrets she had never spoken aloud. One evening, as they sat on a balcony overlooking the endless sea of clouds, she told Lila the truth about Kalen. He is not just a pet, she said, her hand resting on the dragon's smooth head. He is a bond dragon. Our bloodlines are tied. When I feel pain, he feels it. When I dream, he sees the dream. Long ago, every royal Silthari had one, but the last war killed them all. Kalen is the only one left. Lila looked at the creature with new respect. So he chose you. We chose each other, Lyria corrected softly. When I was born, his egg pulsed in time with my first cry. That is how the bond forms. She paused, then added, and he can do more than fight. He can speak to old machines. Machines your people left behind. Lila sat up straighter. What machines? Beneath Sonara, Lyria said, her voice dropping to a whisper. In the deep vaults, where the earth still remembers your touch, there are war machines, titans of steel, dormant but not dead. They respond to human will. And Kalen, he can wake them. Lila's heart pounded. You mean mechs, like the ones from the archive? Lyria nodded. But only a human can pilot them. Only human thought can unlock their core. The Scifi tried for centuries. Nothing worked. The machines sleep until a human voice calls them. That night, they made a plan. They would go to the Undercity, the buried ruins beneath the floating spire. It was forbidden territory, sealed after the Great Silence. The council had placed guards, traps, and memory wards to keep anyone from entering. But Lyria knew secret paths. Paths only the royal line could open. 3 nights later, under cover of a solar eclipse that turned the twin moons black, they slipped away. Kalen led the way, his body glowing faintly, lighting their path through narrow tunnels that twisted like roots through stone. The air grew colder, damper. The walls changed from living crystal to rough, ancient metal. Human metal. Lila ran, her fingers over a rusted door marked with faded letters. Project Sentinel. Her breath caught. This is it. They found the vault deep below, behind 7 sealed doors. Each one required a different key, some physical, some mental. Lyria used her blood on the first. Kalen sang a low tone that unlocked the second. The third opened only when Lila spoke her name in clear English. The doors groaned as they slid apart, revealing a vast chamber filled with towering shapes covered in dust and shadow. Lila stepped forward, her boots echoing in the silence. She reached out and brushed dust from the nearest machine. Beneath the grime was a faceplate shaped like a human helmet, eyes dark but waiting. A Mark V Sentinel mech, Earth's last hope, buried and forgotten. It's real, she whispered. Kalen moved to the center of the room, where a raised platform held a single chair wrapped in wires and glass. Runes glowed faintly beneath it. Scifi script mixed with human circuitry. Lyria watched as Lila climbed into the seat. It molded around her like it had been waiting. What do I do? Lila asked. Think of home, Lyria said. Think of why you fight. Lila closed her eyes. She thought of her sister's laugh, of rainy streets in Chicago, of her squad falling on Zanera, of Lyria pointing at her and saying, I want this human. She thought of all the things worth saving. The chair hummed. Lights flared to life. The mech's eyes glowed blue. All around the chamber, other machines stirred, their systems waking one by one. The ground trembled as metal giants rose from their slumber, but their victory was short-lived. As Lila stepped out of the chair, alarms blared through the Undercity. Red lights flashed. The council had found them. Heavy footsteps echoed in the tunnels. Lyria's face went pale. They must have sensed the energy surge, she said. We have to go. Now. They ran, Kalen leading, Lila and Lyria close behind, but the exit was blocked. Council enforcers stood in full battle gear, weapons raised. Behind them stood Elder Vera, the head of the High Council, her face cold, her eyes burning with fury. Princess Lyria, Vera said, her voice like ice. You have broken sacred law. You have awakened the forbidden. For this you are stripped of title. You are to be confined until judgment is passed. You don't understand, Lyria said, stepping in front of Lila. The Devourers are returning. We need these machines. We need her. The Devourers are myths, Vera snapped. But your treason is real. Take them. The enforcers advanced. Kalen growled, flames gathering in his throat. Lila braced herself, ready to fight bare-handed if she had to. Then the ground shook again, but this time, it was not from the mechs. The walls cracked. Dust rained from the ceiling. From the far end of the tunnel, a massive shape emerged. It was a sentinel mech, walking on its own. Lila hadn't activated it, but it had heard her call. It stepped between them and the enforcers, its massive arm rising like a shield. Vexed, Vera shouted, "Destroy it." Energy bolts struck the mech's chest, but it did not fall. It turned its head slowly toward Lila, as if asking for orders. Lila knew what to do. "Stand down," she said clearly, "but guard them." The mech lowered its arm but did not move. The enforcers hesitated. In that moment of confusion, Lyria grabbed Lila's hand. Run! They fled deeper into the Undercity, not toward the surface but downward, into the oldest ruins where even the council feared to go. They found shelter in a collapsed subway tunnel, its signs still bearing English words. Downtown line. They were safe for now, but not for long. Kalen lay panting, his side bleeding from a glancing shot. Lyria used her healing light, but her hands shook with exhaustion. "They'll call the Royal Guard," she said. "They'll hunt us like criminals." "Then we become what they fear," Lila said. "We become the alliance they erased." Lyria looked at her, tears in her eyes. "My mother will not protect me this time." "Maybe she doesn't have to," Lila replied. "Maybe the people will." For the first time, Lyria smiled, a real, fierce smile. "Then we wake the rest of the mechs. We show them that humans and Silthari were never meant to be apart." Kalen lifted his head, his eyes glowing brighter. He let out a low, resonant hum that echoed through the tunnels. Far above, in the vault, the sentinel mechs stirred again, their systems syncing to his call. But as they prepared to move, a new sound reached them, not from the council, not from the mechs, but from the sky. A deep, hollow groan like metal tearing across the void. Lila and Lyria ran to a broken skylight and looked up. Above the spire, the stars flickered, then vanished, replaced by something vast, dark, and hungry. The Devourers had come. Panic spread through the city, alarms wailed, lights dimmed. The Empress appeared on every screen, her voice calm but urgent, calling all citizens to shelter. But Lyria knew the truth. Shelter would not save them. Only the old alliance could. She turned to Lila, her eyes blazing with resolve. "It's time." Lila nodded. "Let's wake the giants." Together, with Kalen at their side, they climbed back toward the vault. The council guards were gone, called to defend the upper levels. The mechs stood ready, their systems humming with power. Lila climbed into the lead sentinel, her hands gripping the controls like they were part of her. Lyria mounted Kalen, who had grown slightly larger, his scales now pulsing with golden light. "I will guide you through the city," she said. "The Devourers move through thought. They will try to break your mind before they break your body. Then I'll give them something loud to listen to," Lila said. As the first Devourer ship tore through the atmosphere, a swirling mass of shadow and teeth, the sky spire trembled. The Empress stood alone on the highest balcony, watching the storm approach. Below, in the heart of the city, a human and a princess prepared to fight not just for survival, but for memory, for truth, for the bond that had been broken long ago, and deep in the earth the machines of a dead world roared to life once more. Beneath a sky the color of dried blood, Lila Morgan crouched behind a shattered ridge of black stone. Her boots were caked in ash, her uniform torn at the shoulder, and a thin line of dried plasma burn ran from her temple down to her jaw. She blinked dust from her eyes and tightened her grip on her rifle. Around her, the last dozen soldiers of Earth's Zanara expedition huddled in silence, their breaths shallow, their faces pale under the twin moons that hung low in the alien sky. Zanara was not supposed to be like this. The mission brief had called it a dead world, quiet, empty, rich in rare minerals. No signs of intelligent life, just ruins and silence. But 3 days ago the Silthari came. They descended from the clouds in ships that looked like folded glass and starlight, moving without sound, striking without warning. Their warriors were tall, slender, with silver-white hair and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They moved like dancers, but their weapons burned through steel like paper. Lila had seen entire squads vanish in flashes of violet light. She had watched her commander turn to glass and shatter when a Silthari beam touched his chest. Now only she and 11 others remained. They were low on ammo, lower on hope. The rescue ship was gone, blown out of orbit in the first hour of the attack. There was no backup, no retreat. Just this ridge, this dust, and the slow crawl of dread in their stomachs. Then the ground trembled, not from an explosion, but from something deeper, older. The air grew still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. From the horizon, 3 Silthari warships rose, not flying but unfolding like petals opening in reverse. They hovered above the battlefield, casting long shadows that swallowed the ruins whole. A ramp of light descended from the center ship, and figures began to walk down. First came the guards, 8 of them, clad in armor that shimmered like oil on water. Their faces were hidden behind smooth masks, their steps perfectly in time. Behind them came a woman wrapped in a cloak woven from what looked like liquid moonlight. Her presence alone made the air hum. She moved slowly, regally, as if the battlefield were a garden. This was the Empress of the Silthari, though Lila did not know her name yet. She carried no weapon, but power rolled off her like heat from a furnace. And then came the girl. She was younger than the others, maybe Lila's age, with long silver hair that floated slightly, as if underwater. Her eyes were wide, curious, and the color of amethysts held up to fire. She wore no armor, only a simple tunic of deep blue, and at her side walked a creature that made Lila's breath catch. It was about the size of a large dog, but shaped like a serpent with legs. Its body was covered in smooth, iridescent scales that shifted from deep indigo to soft gold as it moved. 2 small horns curled above its eyes, and its tail flicked with quiet intelligence. It had no wings, but it moved with a grace that suggested it didn't need them. This was no beast. It watched the humans with sharp, knowing eyes, its head tilted as if listening to their thoughts. The girl, Princess Lyria, stopped a few yards from the ridge. She didn't look afraid. She looked fascinated. Her gaze swept over the broken mechs, the scorched earth, the trembling soldiers, and then her eyes locked onto Lila. Lila didn't move. She kept her rifle ready, her finger near the trigger, but something in the princess's stare made her hesitate. There was no hatred there, no triumph, only wonder. The Empress spoke first, her voice low and musical like wind through crystal chimes. These are the humans, the ones from the old songs. They were supposed to be gone. Lyria stepped forward, ignoring the guards who shifted nervously. She pointed directly at Lila. Her voice was clear, calm, and carried across the silence like a bell. I want this human, Mother. The words hung in the air. The Empress turned her head slowly, studying her daughter. The guards tensed. Even the dragon creature, Kalen, lifted its head, its eyes narrowing slightly as if weighing the choice. Lila's squad stirred behind her. Someone whispered, What's she talking about? Another muttered, Don't let them take her. But Lila stayed still. She met Lyria's gaze without flinching. She didn't understand why this alien princess had chosen her of all people. She wasn't an officer. She wasn't special. She was just a soldier who'd survived longer than the rest. The Empress said nothing for a long moment. Then she gave a single nod. As you wish. Before Lila could react, the world blurred. A wave of energy washed over her, not painful but heavy, like sinking into warm water. Her vision swam. She heard shouts from her squad, the crackle of energy weapons, but it all faded fast. The last thing she saw was Lyria's face, calm and certain, and Kalen's glowing eyes fixed on her like twin stars. Then darkness. When Lila woke, she was no longer on the battlefield. She lay on a soft surface that felt like silk, but looked like woven light. The air smelled sweet, like rain on flowers she'd never seen. Above her, the ceiling pulsed gently with a soft blue glow, shifting like a living thing. She sat up slowly, her head pounding, her muscles stiff. She was in a room unlike anything she'd ever known, walls curved like petals. Furniture grew from the floor like polished roots and vines with tiny glowing buds curled along the edges. Through an open archway, she saw a garden that floated in the sky, trees with silver leaves, pools of water that hung in midair, and distant towers that spiraled into the clouds. A soft chime sounded. Lila turned. Lyria stood in the doorway, barefoot, her silver hair loose around her shoulders. Kalen was beside her, his scales dimmer now, but his eyes still bright. He watched Lila with what could only be described as caution and curiosity. You're awake, Lyria said. Her English was perfect, smooth, with only the faintest accent. I was worried the transfer might have hurt you. Lila stood slowly, her hands empty. She had no weapons, no armor, just her torn uniform. Where am I? My chambers, Lyria replied. In the Sky Spire, the heart of the Silthari Empire. Why did you take me? Lila asked, her voice rough. Why me and not one of the others? Lyria stepped inside, Kalen padding silently behind her. She sat on a low bench that rose from the floor as she approached. Because you looked at me, she said simply. When my guards came, your squad hid or aimed their weapons. But you looked right at me. You didn't flinch. You didn't beg, you just saw me? Lila frowned. That's it? That's why I'm here? To us, humans are ghosts, Lyria said, her voice dropping. Our histories say you vanished thousands of cycles ago after the Great Silence. We thought you were a myth, a story parents told to warn children about war. But you're real. And you're different. Different how? You feel loud, Lyria said, searching for the right word, not in sound, in spirit. Your kind burns bright and fast. You build, you fight, you love, you die, all in the blink of a Silthari eye. We've forgotten how to burn. We've become still, quiet, safe, but you still burn. Kaylin let out a soft rumble, almost like a purr, and moved closer to Lila. She tensed, but the creature only sniffed her boot, then sat back on its haunches, watching her with calm eyes. He likes you, Lyria said, a small smile touching her lips. Kaylin doesn't like many, Lila exhaled. She was exhausted, confused, and far from home, but something in Lyria's honesty disarmed her. This wasn't a trap, at least not yet. This was something stranger. A girl from a star-spanning empire, raised in silence and order, reaching out to a broken soldier from a dead world. What happens now? Lila asked. Now, Lyria said, standing. You rest. You heal. And when you're ready, you tell me about Earth, about your songs, your wars, your stars. Because if humans are real, then maybe the old stories are true too. Maybe the Devourers are coming back. Lila froze. The Devourers? Lyria's smile faded. Her eyes darkened. They are why we hid, why we erased your name from history. They eat worlds, Lila, and they remember your scent. Outside, the twin moons rose higher, casting long shadows over the floating city. Somewhere far below, Lila's squad was either dead or captured. But here, in this impossible room, a human and an alien princess stood on the edge of something neither fully understood, and the dragon at their feet watched, silent, as if it already knew how the story would end.